Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and normally alongside here each and every week with me is LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller, and we, of course, are the hosts of the show, but Cindy is on a weekly hiatus, if you will. She's attending a corporate event this week, so she won't be joining me this morning, but nevertheless, I will be batching it, I guess, if you will, on my own, but not to worry. We've got a great show for you this morning. Joining me here in just a few moments is going to be my very special guest that was actually supposed to be on last week, but we ran into a technical issue and unfortunately had to cancel literally last minute. But my special guest this morning is going to be Alecia Larsen. She is an LPGA Class A teacher professional, plus she's the founder and president of Gratitude Golf. And as you maybe recall, if about a month or so ago, if you tuned into Golf Talk Live, she was interviewed there as well, and we talked about her book, which she authored, The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about Gratitude Golf, and I got a few questions that were submitted in by some students and listeners of the program, and I'll see if maybe she can help them a little bit with their game. But anyways, glad that you can join us this morning on the show. And as I said, every Tuesday morning, from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is the time slot for the Women of Golf Show. And if you want to find us, go to blogtalkradio.com. Up in the search key, type Women of Golf, and that will take you to the main page. And, of course, during the live broadcast from 9 to 10 Eastern on Tuesdays, you'll find us front and center. But for some reason, if you're not able to join us, not to worry. Just go to that link, blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf, and just scroll down to the on-demand section. And as I've mentioned so many times before, the shows are auto-recorded, so you can tune in when it's convenient for you if you're not able to join us live. But not to worry, as I said, lots of great shows in the archive section as well. Lots of great guests that we've had in the past. Also, for those of you that like to use iTunes, if you go to itunes.com, and in the podcast section, if you type in Women of Golf, that will take you there as well, and you can listen to the archived programs there as well. Anytime you want to call in or speak to us on the program, you can do so by calling area code 347-945-5855. That's 347-945-5855. And for some reason, if you are in the golf industry and you'd like to come on the show and maybe share your thoughts with Cindy and my audience, we'd love to hear from you. So you can reach out to either one of us. My email is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And Cindy's, of course, is cindy@cindymillergolf.com. Or if you just have comments or questions about the program, maybe you've thought of somebody that you'd like to hear on the show that you maybe know or have contact with, and you'd like to recommend that they be a guest on the show, you can reach us out at those emails as well. We'd love to hear from you. As I said, we've got a great show for you. Let me just remind everybody, too, this Thursday is when my other program, Golf Talk Live, airs, and that is from 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And I got a great show for you this week coming up. Another interesting round of Coach's Corner. Coach's Corner is a great panel discussion that I started about 3 years ago on that show, and where I invite a number of different PGA and other professionals as well, and people that specialize in different areas of golf, including fitness and the mind game and so forth. And we come on and have a very insightful and interesting panel discussion, so it's worth tuning into. And then, of course, I follow up on the second hour with a great guest, and I've got a great guest this week as well. Dave Bisbee is going to be joining me here this week on Thursday. As I said, we'd love for you to share the show, so make sure that you go to either Facebook.com, and you can look up either myself, I'm Ted Odorico, or Cindy Miller. We always post for the Women of Golf, and of course I always post on there for the Golf Talk Live show, the upcoming guests and dates and so forth and times of the shows. So you can always find them there, or go to the Golf Talk Live blog page. Everything is posted there as well. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. That's Ted and Buck, CEO is in capital letters. And thank you, as always, for all of the recent followers there. Let me just tell you a little bit about my guest this morning, a little bit more detail, and while I'm waiting for her to come on board. As I mentioned, she is a Class A LPGA teacher professional and founder of and president of Gratitude Golf, also the author of The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. And her vision, if you will, for Gratitude Golf and her coaching and golf instruction is to equip golfers to tap into their full potential by discovering their individual gifts. And with specific tools and to enhance their progress, she encourages them to stay focused on positive achievements and become aware of and work through any obstacles that may be keeping them from reaching their goals. And on the lesson tee, there's an important emphasis on the fundamentals of the game and specific mechanics, but also includes an essential combination of the mental approach of the game of golf and life. And she coaches everybody from beginners to intermediate to advanced players, and currently coaches and teaches men, women, and junior golfers as some of her students. So very well-rounded, if you will, as a professional. And was a great guest on Golf Talk Live, and I'm really looking forward to having her back on the show this morning here on the Women of Golf show. And I see that she's raring to go, so let me bring out, since I've done the introduction, let me bring out my very special guest this morning, Alecia Larsen. Good morning, Alecia.
Good morning, Ted. Good morning.
How are you doing this morning? How are you doing this morning?
I am great, thank you. Thank you, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Not a problem. And fortunately, touch wood, we made it here this morning. As I was mentioning earlier to the folks, we had a little technical issue last week when you were originally supposed to be on, but nevertheless, we managed to work them all out. So here you are. Alecia, let me just ask you to start off just a little bit. You've got so many great accolades that it just would take up most of the hour just to read them all out. But I know that obviously you wrote a very great book. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But maybe you could just kind of lead us into a little bit, kind of give us a sneak preview, if you will, as to why you wrote that book. What was the reasoning behind it?
Well, it was like over time. I would probably say realistically over maybe 5 to 10 years, because I had gentlemen years and probably in the more of the 10-year mark had said to me, I told him I said someday I want to write a book, and he said, well, that's great, but you really should write. There's a lot of golfing books out there, but you really should write one that's got a special message or something different, because you want to make it kind of stand out. And so that was kind of my first thought of a book and what it might be consist of. But over time, and then when I began to when I met Dr. Shad Helmstetter too, then I realized that self-talk had kind of directed my life in many ways that I wasn't even aware of. So my awareness was, I didn't realize I was really beating myself up as much as I was at times in my life, or how it dictated the outcome in my life of whatever situation I was in. So I sat, and when I would give lessons and I would sit and listen to people, like either positively or negatively influence their outcomes, right. I was like, wow, there's so many more people that need to hear this message. That's kind of what spawned it. And then as over the next, 5 to 7 years, I would just start taking notes and, like situational stories and that sort of thing. But Ted, it happens every day on the lesson tee, where I see people creating realities that really aren't, but they are in their mind.
Right.
So they are. That's just a tricky little statement. If you literally think what I just said, they create this reality that is not a reality, but it really is, because they're living it, and it is in their mind. So, it's just a fascinating topic to think about relative to what, and then I think, gosh, what have they done in their lives to make, set up these obstacles, or if they do that to succeed too, because you can take two scenarios. When I do my presentations, I take a successful person and somebody who in people's eyes maybe isn't so successful, and, why are they the way they are today?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And you know, what's kind of interesting, Alecia, is this: if you really look back through the history of golf, you know, we really never talked about this. I mean, really, and I'm going from my own personal experience, the first I'd ever really heard about sort of the mind game, if you will, was Jack Nicklaus. You know, Jack talked about how the importance of self-talk and really the importance of his mental game, if you will, as it was referred to then. Now, of course, everybody doesn't like to always use that terminology. They have something else, emotional and other things factor into it. But, you know, Jack was really the first person I recall ever really talking about that. It might have been an underlying or unwritten rule, if you will, or even a subconscious thing that all golfers probably realized was necessary. But he was really the first one, in my understanding, that really sort of brought that discussion forward. And it just sort of seemed like it died, like you never heard a lot about it. But here lately, especially in the last decade or so, you're hearing a lot of people, a lot of the current players, both on the LPGA and the PGA tours, are talking about how important that self-talk and that positive reinforcement. And you do that very well through your program and programs through Gratitude Golf. So talk a little bit about that. And what your background philosophy is with Gratitude Golf.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It has been kind of like this. It's almost like the big elephant, the white elephant in the room kind of thing, but nobody wanted to talk about it. You know, it's
right.
Or we'd see something on television and say, "Wow, how did that happen? How did that guy like get a 9 on this in a major tournament?" And you know, how did that happen to that guy? He's so good. But really, if you went and we had the opportunity to interview that player, he or she probably would have said, you know, gosh, I just, you know, mentally that hole just kills me every time I play it, you know. So we might have found exactly the reason what happened when we saw it on, you know, on TV, if you will. And so, you know, I guess gratitude for me was the turning point when I was at a really low point in my career. I realized that, you know, the way that I'm going to feel better is to do something nice for other people. Because my mother taught me that when I was a child. So I started doing things, you know, with very little resources as far as emotionally for me, because I was very broken. But I wanted to feel good, and I think I mentioned this to you before, where I was selfishly just kind of doing things to make me feel good, but I was doing good things for the world, other people, and giving free, you know, women's clinics and that sort of thing. So that kind of spawned that. But I think that I was very grateful for, you know, when my company 5 years ago, when I decided I wanted to call it Gratitude Golf, because I started paying it forward and feeling and living gratitude more. And it simply just changed my life. I mean, there's no other way to say it. When you start living from gratitude instead of just talking about it and saying, oh, I know what gratitude is, but when you start really entrenching yourself in the throes of it and starting to really look at things like, what is it like to really live it? You know, what is it like to maybe, like, cliche-wise, live one day at a time and really enjoy whatever moment, what stops you in your feet, what gives you pure joy, you know. So when we're golfing, we should embellish that. You must be out there playing and saying, you know, gosh, I'm playing one of the greatest games ever. And I never did that when I was competing, and it really hurt me. You know, I was so caught up in trying to steer the ball and make it stay in play and hit the great shot and the perfect shot all the time. And I wanted it so badly. And there's so many golfers out there like that. And so I kind of wanted to be that example to them, to say, look, I know exactly how you feel, and I've been in your shoes. And I had this young girl that's a sophomore in high school text me last night. She said, when did you start? She's very much like me in that sense, you know, like she wants it so badly, wants to play D1 golf. And she's like, when did you start, and how did that happen when you just started swinging freely and really started, you know, enjoying the moment out on the golf course instead of making it such a hard thing, you know, pressing and, you know, pressure and all that stuff. And so there's a lot of people out there that we just want them to enjoy the game, don't we? I mean, you and I, from our perspective, stay in the game, have fun. Just, you know, it's okay. We're, you know, just don't get so frustrated. So gratitude can give you that.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, and hopefully she listened to the words of wisdom that you gave her. You know what's really kind of interesting, Alecia, is this, and I guess really, and I hate to, you know, I always hate this, especially as you know, I get a little more snow. Well, I've got a lot of snow on the roof up top now, but But as I gray and get a little bit older and a little thinner too, but that's another story. But what's always interesting is this: if you listen, because you've obviously played competitively, and you've played golf, and of course now you do more of the teaching side of things. But as you were sort of up and coming through your career, I think there's and everybody's different, I realize that, but there's a certain arrogance, I think, as a younger person. When you're in your 20s, you're ready to conquer the world, and it's all about kind of me. It's about the me factor. It's, well, how can I propel my career, and how can I, get more of this, and how can I do more of that? And I think as you mature, and I'm sure you've heard this with some of the younger players that you talk about, it's like, well, how do I do this, and how do I do this? And it's not really so much about giving back. And I don't mean to say that they're selfish, but I just think the mindset is different at that age. And I think that as you mature and develop, and I'm sure if you've spoken to or talked with a lot of the great ladies that are on the Legends Tour and even the men on the Champions Tour, there's a different approach to how they reflect back on their careers. Now they start to get it and realize, you know what, I'm more grateful now for what I have and what I can do. And it's not all about, how great I'm going to play out there. Sure, I want to get out there and I want to beat my competitors, but it's just they're grateful for the fact that they've been given this opportunity and they've been given these special gifts that have allowed them to be out there with the rest of the gang, if you will. And I think that the younger folks coming up there haven't really learned that yet. And
I'm losing you, Ted.
What were your thoughts on as far as with sort of personality? Do you think that that's something that you see more of with some of the younger folks out there?
And I'm sorry, Ted. Could you ask the question? You broke up just a little bit with the question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I'll shorten it then. How's that? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit from your experience what the younger generation coming up now, this sort of about me?
Yeah. That's it. That's an interesting. Because I work with the girls in my academy are anywhere from 10 to 18, and there's a lot of peer pressure, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and every kid that I have in the academy has a different home situation, but technology the way it is today, it's so different. They can with social media and things like that, and there's a little bit more of that instantaneous, I should get it right away kind of thing, and not that slow gratification of I've got to work hard for it.
Right.
And so it's the kids, there is a different mindset. So I think that for me that's a really important piece to continue to, even if over the years, if they're with me, when they're with me, they might not, the light bulb might not come on right away, like it doesn't come on like during their high school life, and maybe they, but if they go into college and they start to get a little bit older and they start to see life a little bit from a different paradigm, and then they start getting the gratitude thing, they're like, oh, I think I know what Alecia meant now. But, if you plant that seed and that just keeps, the tree starts out as a small little bud, and it just, you just look at everybody as a tree that, or, a plant or something that's growing. It's just a seedling that you plant it. You plant that seed and you get that mindset of gratitude, or just, being in the moment and not, but yet at the same time, I tell kids, I want you to be humbly confident, because they do have to have that little bit about themselves. This is about me. I remember watching Heather Farr at the Broadmoor, and with my husband, and I was like, I said to him, I'm like, wow, she just looks arrogant walking down the fairway, but she was just massively confident. I mean, she was so good back then in the 90s. I mean, I couldn't believe how good she was, but she looked so. I thought I perceived it as arrogance, but it's just mere confidence. She strutted down that fairway because she was good. She was the best player back then in that particular year. And I remember that just stuck with me so much that, there is a bit of it, like I really have to practice hard and or they think that, and you want to have that desire and that heart of a lion kind of, I want this, but yet it's a fine line you walk. You have that, okay, you want that because this player that I was referring to, she wants it really badly and practices a lot and does all that stuff, and so did I, but yet then you have to go over to that kind of compassionate gratitude side of, okay, now enjoy the moment, and here's how you deal with adversity and how you deal with a bad shot or a bad hole, or, but I just think that they don't realize, like, the pros hit really bad shots and have 8s and 9s on holes, and, you're not exempt from that. Sorry. Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's a great point too, is, we don't see, because of the wonderful editing on television, we don't see, all of the bad shots. We might see a couple in a round if it's really momentous, but for the most part, we don't see a lot of the because there's just not enough time. And obviously they want to make it an exciting sport, so that, they want to have all the really, cool shots, if you will. Talk about, we can never emphasize enough about the importance of practice, and specifically practicing with a purpose. What types of things do you Hello?
Hi.
Yeah. I lost you there for a little second, Ted.
Okay.
What types of something? I heard you.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize. I don't know what's happening. Must be my connection. What types of things do you instill with respect to practice for your students in order to practice with purpose? Yeah,
I really encourage them to listen to their self-talk, even, just what their frustration level is, or if they're, while they're practicing, because if you practice it there, that's kind of like normal then to go out and do the same thing when you're on the course. So I don't want them practicing, bad self-talk or bad, frustration or anything like that. I mean, you can be not liking the outcome of your shot and then, try to change it. But I try to get them to, challenge their mind a little bit and challenge, play, because it's kind of that old proverbial, we do block practicing or random or whatever. So if they know they're doing block practicing on a specific shot for a specific distance or something like that, then that's okay. That's one type. Then you do random, and then you can do like playing a course on the range, that type of thing, or doing a playing lesson. But mindset wise, I'm always trying to, get them to just kind of relax and just be in the moment, even when they're practicing, because then there's purpose. I want them to have intent, to have, okay, my intentions are to practice a 30-foot putt or my long leg putting or something, and then I'm going to give it all my attention. So being aware of your attitude too during practice sessions, I think, is really is critically important as well. So I try to emphasize that a lot.
Right. Let me ask you something. I had some students of mine had emailed some questions, and I'd just like to throw a few out if I could, and just get your feedback. Do you mind?
Sure, absolutely.
One of the students wrote to me, and this is kind of a legitimate question. We're all familiar. There's all different types of golf clubs out there. We see all different types, from forage to cavity back, and all different looks in that. So again, it's not just feel, but it's also a visual component as well when making a purchase. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people struggle when it comes to the golf ball. There's so many out there, and they don't know what ball they should be playing because they all look the same. So how do you advise a student if somebody's looking to maybe improve their game a little bit and wants to make sure they're playing the right ball for them with so many on the market? What are some suggestions that you try to give them?
Oh, there are so many on the market, and it's that that is a tough question, and I kind of like to defer to, like, for instance, Titleist used to give these little booklets out and tell you what each type of ball should do, and feel versus distance, or both, or and I think that you can hear a lot from a ball even when you putt it. it's going to be that, that soft or kind of that rocky hard coming to come off your putter face. I really feel like that's kind of like, what kind of driver should I hit? And it's a personal thing. It's like there's supposed to be, there's harder balls. There's balls that are harder for, coming off the face, and, they are going to give distance. They don't want feel and so it's kind of like I asked my students to do their own research in that, and so that we, each person kind of is okay with, because each company, you can go online now and Google and say, okay, what's this ball do, or what is this ball about? Is it feel or distance or both, like I mentioned? So it's kind of, I let my students kind of decide on those. I'm not really, I don't want to push one ball versus the other, or one company versus the other. So I kind of just let them, if they like it and they say, I tried these for a while and I don't like those at all, but I really like these. And I think that's the most important thing, really. I mean, there's great balls out there. The companies have, great options for them. I think it's much like,
buying, obviously a different price point, but much like buying a vehicle, it's a personal thing. You have to get out there and kind of try it out. And I think also, too, Alecia, you raise a great point, is, you have to decide based on your abilities, your game, what's going to work best with you, because they all offer a distance ball, they all offer a feel and a combination of the other, or both.
Yep.
But again, it's kind of like when you're selecting your clubs. Again, with the ball, it's different because they all look the same. But you have to. It comes down to more feel and how it reacts to your your club face. If you want more distance, then you might want to look at a distance ball. If you need something that's maybe going to spin a little bit more, maybe you're not getting enough spin on the when you're approaching the greens. And, so there's different factors to play. One of the biggest mistakes, and I'm sure you've seen this many times, that I see is they say, well, everybody says that, and I'm not knocking any one manufacturer, but, the pros play blah, 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 blah. Well, most amateur golfers don't realize that these golf professionals have a swing speed of, in many cases, 100 plus miles an hour. Most amateurs are lucky if they're hitting 85. So, that dictates a lot. So you're right. I think going online, especially with Google, going online and doing a little bit of homework, and maybe trying a few. Most places you can get a sleeve or so of golf balls, and just try some different ones and just see what works best for you. But you're right. It's a very personal thing, and that was pretty much the answer I gave back.
The other thing too with that is that I would encourage that golfer to, if they're, I don't know, there's not really a cutoff point, if you will, to this, but when you practice, try to practice with the old golf balls that like have an old shag bag or something, because the last thing you want to do is practice with, if you're really practicing, and you really want to know how the ball's coming off the face, and you want to know if there's any spin on a particular shot, or if there's any, spin or roll or whatever, practice with the balls that you're going to play with, instead of range balls, because they'll come off the face a little bit differently. So I always encourage my students, especially ones competing, to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. Another one too, which is kind of common, especially nowadays with so many different products out there and different golf clubs available. Most people understand they can carry 14 clubs in the bag, but they don't know which 14 to carry. Again, this is a bit of a personal thing, but with some of your higher handicapped amateurs, are there any recommendations, and not specific brand or anything like that, but types of, whether it be maybe adding more hybrids in the club, in the bag rather? Do you just have that discussion with any of your students as well, as how they should maybe outfit their golf bag?
Yeah, on a daily basis for sure. So it's, when you're first starting, or you want to find that, well, there's so many different scenarios with that, but if you don't want to make a huge investment in the beginning, but you want to kind of just, get started on some decent little set. There's good starter sets out there, but with lower hand or higher handicap golfers, I definitely encourage hybrids. I had some friends that back in the day when the hybrids first came out, and they were like, "Wow, tell all your students that, I've taken the 3-iron out of my bag because, the 3-iron came out so low and hot, and it went over the par threes, the long par threes they played on the tour. And so
right.
they're like, they love the hybrids with a little more height, and they can land it on the green and have it kind of stop and roll not as much. So, I thought it was funny back too when Vijay Singh started playing, and he had a little 7-wood in his bag, and they said, yeah, he took out his grandma's little 7-wood, and but it's just, I always could just say the bottom line is it's more loft, it's more forgiving. So again, we're going to go back to, we want people to stay in the game and have fun. So we certainly don't want them to play, clubs that have not enough loft or really hard, if your swing isn't developed, to do that. So I encourage higher handicappers to have the hybrids in their bag, and the lower handicappers, I've always encouraged them, get drivers or clubs that are fitted, especially drivers. That's such an animal of its own, So, I'm a big proponent of hybrids with higher handicappers.
Right. And I think also, too, the other thing is, and you just hit on this, was to make sure that everything is fitted properly. There's nothing worse than, especially, and I'll use the ladies as example, getting your husband's hand-me-downs, which maybe are a heavier club in some cases, longer clubs, and you get out on the practice tee and you're wondering why you can't hit anything because it's not fit for you. And so there are differences. Not all clubs are the same, and different clubs react differently, and I think that you have to be outfitted properly, and that's where you need to go and see your local LPGA or PGA professional that is certified in club fitting, and just to get them to help you with that.
Sure.
The other thing too, and these are some common questions, but a lot of people, and I'm just interested in your thoughts here. I had a student that wrote in with 2 questions really, but both sort of similar. The first one was that they're catching their irons thin, and then the other one was that they were shanking the ball, and they wanted to know what causes that. So let's address the thin shot first. What traditionally are some of the things that can cause hitting the ball thin?
Well, I just had, obviously I see this every day too, but, a lot of times thin, in my opinion, when I talk to my students, I like them to think about managing their vertical and their lateral movement, just, managing. We don't want a lot of vertical, obviously, because, if I go to the top of my swing and I move up 2 inches, I'm going to have to probably come back down those 2 to find the ball again. And if I don't, I could hit it thin. So we manage vertical and lateral, and we want much more rotational. And so that's one of the things that I talk about. But I also know that a lot of people top the ball because they're actually anticipating hitting the golf ball. And so they flinch. Their shoulders will go up and they'll move if you think, okay, my hands are connected to the golf club, but if my shoulders flinch, my arms are going to go up. And it doesn't have to be very much. We all know that. It can be a quarter of an inch and you're going to top the ball and hit it thin. So it's, flinching. I just did this with a little girl. She's like 12, and she was, on the lesson tee on Sunday. And I said, look, if you swing with relaxation, just trust your golf swing through the impact area, so it's more of a trusting versus I'm going to try. She looked up at me and she goes, well, I just don't feel like I have enough power then if I relax like that. And I said, well, actually it's the opposite. If you relax, if your shoulders don't go up and you don't shrug your shoulders during impact, you're actually going to have more power because it's got your arms will go through there faster, and that means club head speed, which means distance. And so she started experiencing that a little bit. She was thinking that she had to get all tight and tense at impact to really, hit at that ball and shoulders go up and all this tension. And I'm like, no, that's actually going to rob you of distance. So tension's a big adversary. It's not golf and tension don't particularly care for each other. So I think that's a lot of, hitting versus swinging.
Right.
So specifically when I teach, beginners, I'm like, look, I know golf is about, if you ask a whole bunch of people what golf is, it's, okay, the object of golf is to get the ball in the hole in the least amount of strokes. So you're actually hitting a ball. But I try to teach from a swinging mindset of, I'm going to teach you how to swing the instrument. And then in my book, you'll see where I talk about the oops rule. It's, oops, my ball got in the way. It's contact is incidental because I swung the instrument. I actually hit the ball. But when you really think about
Right.
hitting, you flinch and then you pull up and then you'll top it. You'll hit it thin.
Yeah, and this is where, in the setup, that rule applies. When you set up properly, the ball is going to get in the way. But you shouldn't focus on hitting the ball. You should focus on a fluid, smooth swing and swinging that instrument, as you said. And of course, as many people have said in the past, that the ball just gets in the way. And I had a student that I've been working with for a little while, and when he first came to me, I remember something that you had mentioned a moment ago about vertical and so forth. And one of the things that he used to do in his backswing is he would literally stand up and get out of posture, and so much so that his head, and I videotaped him, and I showed him where his head was rising anywhere on average between 6 to 8 inches. And I thought to myself, this is why you're inconsistent. Because obviously there is going to be a subtle movement, but when you're lifting up that much, and then of course he has to drop back down in order to get even anywhere close to the ball, and then of course he's either hitting it fat or flinching, as you said, in the last minute. So it's very, very important, and I know you talk about this in some of the notes that I got about how you on the lesson tee you really emphasize the fundamentals. And work on the mechanics of the swing when you're out in the lesson tee to make sure that people are working with the proper tools before they get out on the golf course, and that's a big thing. What about shanking the ball? What's some of the things that cause that, and how can a golfer? I know we don't have the benefit of a visual here, so if you can maybe in best case scenario explain a little bit about shanking the ball. What some of the causes for that?
Well, I mean that could be. If you sometimes when golfers, like I have golfers that get to the top of their swing and then for some unknown reason their head moves like forward, like towards their weight starts moving towards their toes, or they start moving that way and then they get ahead of it and or they don't. I always really encourage my students to get their hands back in front of them so they know that their hands aren't like way out ahead of the golf ball at impact, and so we're working on like top of backswing wherever that is, even if it's at a part swing on the back, and then keeping your arms in front of you and get them back in front of you is here's 1 and there's 2 is right in the middle and 3 is your finish. So trying the awareness of your golf club and where it's at. I mean, I literally have said to people, I've said to them, you want to try to get yourself into a position where where your club head is, and so like make that ball go straight. Like literally, I would tell them make that ball go straight. Just and they look at me and they're like, well, kind of like, well, that's your job. You're supposed to make me hit the ball straight. But it's interesting that they when I ask them to hit the ball straight, they hit it straight. It's like, and they look at me like, how did I do that? I'm like, well, you're in charge. You're running that. I mean, I use the acronym in my book about the car. And I say, you're driving this car. You have the opportunity. Because the car acronym is choices, awareness, and repetition. So you're in charge of your car right now. So I can't swing the club for you. That's the experiential side that you're going to have. But you do need to know, like when I have them go to the top of their swing and slowly come back down at impact, and their hands are way ahead of it, and their face is way right, and their ball is like right off the hosel. They look at that and go, oh, they know that's not correct. They know that. But if they're going too quickly and they don't have that visual of, oh, yeah, I don't want my club head to be there. They know that. And so you start telling them, okay, go up to the top of your swing, bring the club back down to where you think it should be, and show yourself and feel that. Now that's where you want it to come back to. Now do that in a slow motion, swing thought and motion, and then keep going up and make your swing bigger. But there's a lot of things that it's almost like it's almost like magic. I don't mean that in a sense. I don't mean that like it's magical to them. There are certain mechanics that that we and fundamentals we got to have in place. But golly, there's so many things that the students are they're in charge of, and they do have a lot of answers. They just don't believe it.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables too in golf. I mean, like you said, there could be a thousand scenarios. I think another thing too that I've seen myself with a lot of golfers is is how they address the ball. Some stand way too close to the ball, others stand too far away, and a lot of times in their downswing, subconsciously they try to reroute the club in order to meet that ball. And especially if the ball is too close, if they're standing a little bit too close, especially with their iron shots, what often they will do is they'll sort of draw in their arms in order to make that club face, and of course they're kind of all cramped in and they can't clear properly, and next thing you know, the dreaded shank. So there's a lot of things. So I think what it is I think, as Jack Nicklaus talked about in Golf My Way, when he wrote that or did those videos series a few years back, he talked about every season, the beginning of the season, and for those up in the Northeast right now that are listening to the show, now's the time you should have been already doing it, but now's the time particularly to do it before you get out there, is work on the fundamentals. Work on the grip, the stance, the posture, your alignment, those things, and work on them religiously every time you go to the practice tee, so that when you get out on the golf course, you're going to be, or before, exactly.
The cold months are the perfect time to work on that.
But you know as well as I do, when you get some of those people, they hunker down for the winter, and it's like a bear in hibernation. They just, they don't think about golf, and depending on where they are, they're watching something else, or they're just doing something else. And then they sort of, the dust gets blown off the club when they it comes out of the garage in the spring, and they think, okay, now I want to play golf, and they get out there and maybe hit a few balls and wonder why they can't play, because they've sat dormant for 4 or 5 months or whatever the case is. That's why I love being down in Florida, because I can play all year round, and that doesn't mean I don't have some challenges. But I want to now jump. We've still got a little bit of time here. I want to jump to the book because there's one specific thing I really want to focus on here, and that is the connection between life and golf. And I want to just very quickly tell you about something I was watching last night on the Golf Channel. Faraday interviewed Matthew McConaughey, the actor, and of course he's a big golfer, loves golf, and he said something that was really kind of interesting, that he talks about how he compares his acting to how he plays golf. And what I mean by that is, before every role that he plays, and even every scene, he actually, in addition to preparing for that scene, he actually puts an obstacle or a challenge to himself when getting ready for that character. And the reason why he does that is, he said, if it was a smooth transition every time, it would become boring and repetitious. So he wants to present a challenge. And in golf, much as there is in life, there are many challenges out in the golf course. You did something in your book. We talked about this a few weeks back when you were on Golf Talk Live, about how you ended all of the chapters with a golf lesson and a life lesson. What was your reasoning for do that? And explain what you mean and some of the parallels between life and golf.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that really, kind of prompted that was when I was thinking about writing the book, I was actually contemplating, like, wow, if I could get this person who believes they can't hit a 3-wood off the fairway to actually achieve hitting a 3-wood off the fairway, my hope was that they would leave the lesson tee and actually achieve something outside of golf that they didn't think they could do. You know what I'm saying? They could actually, wow, I just did that and I never thought I could. And what if I applied that to something in my job? If I didn't think that I could meet that projected number that my boss wanted me to do, I wonder if I approached that same concept of, I just achieved that and I didn't think I could. If I think I, gosh, I don't think I can achieve that number, but what if I really actually could? So I wanted them to transition that and take that. So I started thinking about, and then a lot of people would say to me, like, well, that was a great lesson, but, it was also a life lesson for me, because the concept that I was trying to teach them about the golf game, the golf became the vehicle with which I was teaching a bigger message. It was almost like that was why it became so important to me that I have always heard that golf and life are very paralleled, but I started like actually seeing it, and then it was starting to become implementing into it. It was like, wow, this is actually like literally happening right in front of me. And these people are coming, and sometimes they came just to kind of get things off their chest, and they started swinging the ball. It was like a release of, wow, golf became that, and they would walk away with, just one idea with their golf game, but they they walked away with a life thing too, life lesson. So there's such a parallel between those two, and we know that. But I think that's how it became so important to me that I took those two pieces and interjected them together, in the book together, combined them in the book, so that when you read it, you were like, how does this apply? Because the decisions I made with my self-talk affected both my golf and my life,
sure,
as a whole. So, in a good way or a not so good way. So, I felt like if people could really start, like I said earlier, living from gratitude instead of just kind of talking about it, I think that they're being in the moment and helping a young high school girl live one day at a time, and then having her text me and say, thank you so much for teaching me how to do that, even though I had so many people tell me I needed to do it. You taught me how to do it, and now I just stopped and watched the most beautiful sunset I think I've ever seen, and, just that kind of stuff. How do you, it's like a lot of people come to the lesson tee and say, my husband, my friend, they've been telling me that I lift my head, and I know I do it, but I don't know how to fix it. So it's like, that's how you do this.
Right.
You can do both. You can teach somebody how to live one day at a time through gratitude just on the lesson tee, or you can teach somebody how to not lift up 6 inches, on the backswing, so that they can be more consistent. So there's such a intertwining of it. It's just fascinating to me. Totally. The interconnectedness of them is just indisputable.
Yeah, and you did a great job, Alecia, in bringing the two together. And you're exactly right. I think that there are so many lessons that you can take away, and I like the fact that golf does challenge you. I think it would be truly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all talk about it. We listen to players, and they say about wanting to master the game, and really, you don't master the game. And I think if anybody really ever did, there's certainly some that look like they've gotten pretty close to it, but then they have some issues themselves along the way. But I think if you ever truly did master it, I think there would come a point in time after a while. At first it'd be pretty exciting. Hey, I'm hitting every shot perfect, and I'm scoring great, and I'm winning all the tournaments. But then there would come a point in time, I think, where it would become a little bit routine and boring, because, as human beings, we do our best when we overcome challenges or obstacles in our life. And if things come too easy, again, we don't live in that gratitude life. We become very arrogant and very self-absorbed, and look at me, and we don't really appreciate. It's kind of like, we've heard this expression many, many times, but, if you learn to appreciate the value of $1, for instance, you're more apt to be successful and appreciative of the things that you get in life. Whereas if everything is handed to you and, Daddy Warbucks shows up and just dumps a chest full of money, it might be great, but at the same time, you don't really learn the crucial lessons in life. And that applies the same thing in the golf course. If you don't have some challenges along the way, you don't learn anything. It just becomes routine and mundane. And I like how you've tied that together very well in the book. And, you've had, and we talked about this, but, you had some great quotes in there as well. Was there any of the quotes that you can recall off the top of your head that really sort of resonated with you? Was there anything specific?
Oh, gosh. Each one of those quotes was so thought out relative to where they, where they're at strategically in the book. And I honestly couldn't probably pick out one, because every one I picked out is like, ooh, that's so perfect. That's exactly where it belongs. And I love that one. So it's like I could, if I picked one, the other ones might be offended. I don't know. But I just think that the
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that, I think that the quotes are, like in the moment in the book, like they're kind of like to just like hit you right between the eyes, like, whoa, okay, I got that one. And so it's one of those things where I probably don't even have a favorite, because I think I would say every one of those quotes in there is my favorite. So it'd be like, which one means the most to you at the moment. It could be like whatever you're living, if it had to do with something in the foundation chapter, with the fundamentals. Like if you were working on that particular area of your game, the foundation or the fundamentals, comment might like, wow, okay, that really resonated. Or if you're looking at the impact chapter and saying, wow, that what kind of impact? And so it would be like kind of like wherever you're at. That's why I have a student that said he's read this book like 6 times. And he gets something, each
Right.
time he gets just different times of his life that he's actually, this chapter really, hit home to me this time. And last time I read it, that chapter hit home to me more, so it was kind of fun to hear that. So, but I did have an article.
To... Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to tell you, I have an article that I found. That particular student sent me this on Facebook, and it was just fascinating because he said, "Does this sound familiar, Alecia Larsen?" And it's how gratitude can take your golf game to the next level. And it has a picture of Justin Rose and Sergio on the front, and and Justin Rose is patting him on the back or whatever. But what a great article by his name is John Haim. And, he has characteristics of grateful golfers. And it's just a great, how to become a grateful golfer. But, the characteristics of grateful golfers are, they appreciate what they have. They're grateful for competitors. They appreciate the journey and the struggle, which you just referred to. They sweep the shed, which means they kind of they appreciate everything they receive. There's no entitlement kind of thing. They enjoy pressure. They do not rely on winning, and they let go. So it's like that. And then he has paragraphs that talk about each one and expound on them. But then it says, how do you become a grateful golfer? It says, never forget how lucky you are to be playing such a fantastic game. Remember, you can only feel one emotion at once. And think about 2 things you're grateful for at the end of each day. And that's how I helped that one young girl live one day at a time. She started writing a gratitude journal. So throughout the day, her awareness had to be, up to what made you really stop and smile today. So she'd write that down, 2 or 3 things at the end of every day. So she has a gratitude journal she starts. All my students have that. And, be grateful for what you have, including the opportunity to play the game, and just a great article about gratitude in golf. And obviously it would resonate with me because that's the name of my company. So I think this is really, like you had mentioned earlier, is starting to really start, coming out of the kind of the back side of golf to where it's like, okay, we have always said golf is mental, because every time I've said something, in a presentation, how many I think golf is a mental game, and it's invariably, out of, if there were 100 people, I bet you 90% of them would raise their hand. And, so they know that there's a mental aspect to it. And so my thesis paper for my master's level status is that I think that I think I mentioned this too in an earlier show I did, that I think we have an obligation as teachers to start, talking about gratitude and talking about the mental game and teaching these people how, because the world is so fast right now and so furious relative to driving and cutting in front of people and just, it's everybody's, getting angry. People are getting angry at me for doing the speed limit. I'm not, like maybe even over the 5 miles over the speed limit. And they're like shaking their hand at me, and I'm like, wow, I'm just kind of hanging out here doing my thing, and they're just getting mad at me because I'm not going quite fast enough for them, or I'm in their way or something. So I really like to slow things down and live that. So, the gratitude and the mind game and the paper that I'm writing for my master's level status is, I think all of the golf professionals in the country need to start really focusing on how do we, the enjoyment part of it. How do you teach our students to really enjoy it? Because he said in my work with athletes and in previous articles, I highlight the importance of enjoyment over achievement. How's that?
Yes.
I mean, we want enjoyment. It is.
I've always said this.
Levels.
I think the best winners are even better losers, because I think that when you learn to lose with, grace and dignity and showmanship and just humbleness, whatever other adjectives you want to throw in there, I think you become a better winner. And if you look at many of the professionals that have come up through the ranks, the ones that were truly good, phenomenal losers. I mean, they and I don't mean that how they lost the tournament. I'm talking about how they handled themselves, just like Justin did with Sergio when he how they handled themselves in defeat said a lot about their character. I mean, you never saw Arnold Palmer thumping his club down in the ground when he lost a tournament, or Jack Nicklaus, or Gary Player, or any of the Nancy Lopez, any of the Kathy Whitworth. There's thousands of them that you can name. You never saw them. They always whenever they lost a tournament for whatever reason, sure there was disappointment, and I'm sure that internally that they were saying things, gosh, I wish I didn't blow that shot on whatever, but they rose above it, and they went and they congratulated the winner of the tournament, and then they went on and focused on whatever it was that they felt that they didn't achieve in that particular game to overcome that challenge. But you never saw them, again, thumping their club or whatever the reaction would be, and becoming a poor loser. And that's why when they went on to win, they were such graceful and just incredible winners. And I think that's why a lot of the fans really gravitated, because they never had this. They did it with gratitude, as you said. They did it with gratitude, and I think that resonated over the years. And that's something in society I think we need more of. I think, unfortunately, in the world of all of these different programmings, what are they? I can't even think what they call them now, but you see all these reality TV shows, and that it's all about me. It's how can I, get more Facebook likes, and all this kind of stuff. And there's no humbleness, there's no gratitude in their objectives. And I think that this is the same thing with golf. I think if you just go out, if you go out and enjoy it and just have fun, and just there's a time and place to practice the fundamentals and work with your coach or your teaching professional, but you need to play with gratitude, and I think you'll enjoy it much more.
Yeah, and the story of Arnold Palmer and all the thousands and thousands of letters he wrote to people over the however many years, the last 50 years. What a fascinating and what a testimonial of his character, of the person he was. Because my academy here in town, the driving range I was teaching at closed down, so I'm at a private club. In the private club, obviously you have to be a member, and I can't bring public members, to the club to teach them. Right. And so some of my academy girls joined the club. Well, the general manager gave them a little bit off their membership. Then a woman at the club donated $1,500, and I divided that by 5 because 5 of my students joined, and so they got $300 more off their membership. And then I had them do like a little fundraiser, like sell, cookies and pretzels and whatever, because I want them to earn part of what they, they got $600 literally handed to them by the, $300 by the general manager, and then $300 by the woman, but then they had to pay, another $1,000 or whatever it is for their membership. But, I wanted them to have some sort of skin in the game. And then I gave them notes. Yep. You are going to write a handwritten note, thank you note, to this woman and to the general manager. So now the general manager is going to get handwritten notes from all of my students, because you don't take the time to, like, everything is, and I thought, ironically, I saw this thank you note that said, this is not a text message. It was literally on the note. It said, this is not a text. And, it was like a handwritten note that they could write and mail. It was hilarious, because it's like from the 21st century, everybody text messages. So here's a note in the mail that's coming from a young kid that says, this isn't a text, to a general manager of a private club that says, thank you for allowing me and giving me a discount and allowing me the opportunity to play at a private club. That's just fabulous. So, yeah, the gratitude part of it is, that teaching the kids how to do that.
Right. And we understand, with technology, there's things that are out there, and we understand all that, and we partake in many of that. But you're right, that's a lost art. And I think that when you have to, take the time to actually sit down and think about what you want to say, and not, just type it in randomly in a computer or on a phone or something like that. When you actually have to take the time, I think it just means and carries a lot more weight. Alecia,
Sure.
we're just about out of time here, so I want to give you an opportunity to let the folks know if they're interested in getting a copy of your book. Where can they go to find that?
Oh, they can get it on Amazon. And my name spelled Alecia, and then Larsen is with an E, Larsen. If you type in those two things on the search bar, you should be the book cover will come up and you'll find it. So that's on Amazon.com. And then there's also, if anybody has any questions that if they're listening and they will have any questions for me, they can email me at from my website, which is www.gratitudegolf.com, and there's a place that you can email me from there.
Perfect. The book is The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf, by the wonderful author Alecia Larsen, and LPGA teacher professional and founder of Gratitude Golf. What a great hour. Thank you for spending it with me and sharing your thoughts and once again introducing your book to the many thousands of people out there that are tuning in this morning. Thank you for doing so, and I was glad that we were able to make this happen.
Thank you for the opportunity. I thoroughly enjoy talking on your shows because I just love to spread the message of this, with people and just helping them to understand that there's so many ways you can enjoy this great game. So, having and living gratitude as you're walking down the fairways is one great way to do it. So thanks for the opportunity.
Exactly. You're welcome. You're welcome back anytime on both shows. On that note, thank you again, Alecia, for joining me this morning. And I'm going to let you go because I know you got a busy day, as do I. And I look forward to having you join us again in the future.
Okay. Thanks, Ted. You have a great day too.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest, Alecia Larsen. And again, the book is The Missing Link, The Powerful Role of Self-Talk in the Mind Game of Golf. And you can get that at Amazon.com. And just type in the Missing Link and or also Alecia Larsen, and it's Alecia Larsen. Also, just on a quick note, we will be back next week. Cindy should be back on the show. I believe she'll be back from her corporate event. So we look forward to you joining us. Remember to join in every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Women of Golf Show. Just go to blogtalkradio.com, type in Women of Golf up in the search key, and that will take you to the program. And I want to thank all of you for joining me live this morning here on the Women of Golf. And don't forget to tune in this Thursday to Golf Talk Live, also on blogtalkradio.com network. Just type in Golf Talk Live in the search key instead. And that will air from 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you'll tune in this Thursday. I got some great guests, and of course, always starting off with a fantastic Coach's Corner panel discussion on the first hour. But on that note, God bless everybody. Have a great week, and I look forward to having you join us here again next week on the Women of Golf.